So can we talk about chocolate? Chocolate is a dear love of mine, a huge friend. Even over here, there's a winnower, there's a grinder there.
I was just noticing.
There's a conch somewhere in there in the corner.
There were some beans last time we were here.
There's beans. Yeah, there's beans.
Great Guatemalan chocolate from the Quechi.
There you are. Look at that. I had a bar the other day, Guatemala. I was thinking of you.
Well, you've got some. We've got to get you to start making and letting everyone else try these amazing chocolates, because it's the home of it's basically those beans are made by the descendants of the very first people we know who brought chocolate to Europe back in 1544.
1544, that's the start of it. So chocolate comes from the cacao pod, or the fruit of which is the cacao pod.
Yep.
And if you've never tried, it's quite like a lychee. The fruit is quite like a lychee.
The pulp.
The pulp.
Which is the fruit, which is, you're absolutely right, that is the fruit.
And the chocolate will come from the bean, which is then fermented, which is harvested, and it's fermented in its pulp, typically in a batch, isn't it? And then it'll be dried.
Yep,
and then it will be, get the moisture content below 5%, and then it'll be typically shipped and stored before it's processed.
Roasted
exactly, through that process. But I wonder if we could talk about chocolate, because it's a dear love of mine, and it's something that many people think chocolate is just chocolate. But chocolate is remarkably broad, diverse. It has this huge sophistication and variety of flavour to it that many people don't know. Similar to that of red wine or craft coffee or craft gin or IPA beer, etc. And chocolate is just wonderful.
It is. It's amazing. And it's a delight for everybody. You know, it's extraordinary. I think it's like, 25% of people in the UK eat chocolate every day, 75% every 3 or 4 days. We spend more on it than we do on books or music.
More on chocolate than books or music?
Yeah.
Wow.
And in America, it's the same thing too. And it's just something which everybody has. But it's relatively recent. So we've only been eating chocolate for less than a couple of 100 years. We drank it before then. But it does, as you said, it comes from South America. Actually, I've got a question for you now, because you're absolutely right. Your description was fantastic about, the fruit is this pulp. And then you actually, bizarrely, it's one of the very, very few fruits where we eat the seeds. Yeah. And I'm always trying to find other fruits where we focus on the seeds as opposed to the fruit.
Chocolate. Or coffee. Coffee is the seeds. Coffee is the seeds of the cherry.
That's definitely true.
Both fermented foods.
Where else though do we eat the seeds?
Passion fruit is the same.
Passion fruit, we eat the seeds.
Yeah. Quinoa is the seeds.
Quinoa is the seeds. Okay, so you've got a bunch of them.
And then obviously like cereals is the seed,
Yeah.
Technically we call it a grain, but it's the seed.
Yeah,
within
but it's
the
the
grain.
same. It's the fruit, like it is the fruit of the plant.
Yeah, because one of the things which I think is technically weird about chocolate is that, when you drink a wine, you can know which grape variety it comes from. So one of the things which gives rise to, linking this back to what you're saying, one of the things which gives rise to different flavors in chocolate is just as, like different apples taste different or different wines taste different because they've got different grapes in them. There are different cacao varietals. But what's difficult is that whereas on a apple tree, all the apples which grow off it, well, in most cases, they're going to be the same apples. They're going to have the same flavor and the same taste profile. With chocolate, that's not the same because it's basically the seed. So it's the result of the cross-pollination, which is, between, if you plant an apple seed, you don't get the same fruit as if you took that apple off a tree. And the same thing is true of cacao. And I'm always intrigued to understand more about other fruits which work in the same way.
So it constantly changes each kind of generation per se.
Each harvest. And literally, it's much more difficult. Even though we know that cocoa varietals are different, it's much more difficult to sort of
tell the nuances of the subtlety.
Yeah, to actually sort of say, this is just this bean varietal, this is just that bean varietal. The genetics just make it a little bit more complicated.
So it isn't as standardized as other plants, like say per se an F1 zucchini, that's, whatever way it's going to be pretty standardized. We know we grow this type of tomato in this variety and this is what always works for us. Whereas with cacao, which is the source of chocolate, there's going to be slight nuances with each season.
So with good cacao, there'll be slight nuances, but bizarrely, because they've now created clones, so things like CCN51 or CC71, those actually, I think they can basically get always having the same. I mean, they've got the most awful flavor profiles, whatever anybody says. I mean, mass cacao, grown because it's going to be bulk and it's supposedly going to be disease resistant. It's not really disease resistant. But anyway, that probably is all the same variety, but it tastes, the flavor profile is just not very appealing. Whereas great cacao has got lots of different flavors to it.
So chocolate is the two main distinctions. There's commercial or mass-produced chocolate, which typically is focused on the satiation point or the bliss point, where it's just like you just want to eat more of it. And it's something you turn to
scoff, not savor.
Versus craft chocolate or specialty chocolate or bean to bar or artisanal chocolate, whatever way you want to call it, typically is where it's focused more on the terroir, the process, the degree of conch, the composition of it, how all these factors, even down to the tempering, down to the size of the bar, how that's going to just, the flavour is going to taste massively different. Because I know myself, I can have a chocolate that tastes of strawberry, one that tastes of pineapple, one that tastes like, and this is just chocolate and sugar, and that's it, or cacao bean and sugar.
It is just literally, it's just a fermented cocoa seed into a bean, which is then dried and then it's roasted. That will make a difference to it. Then it's ground and conched. How you do that conching is basically sort of, slurping it up and around so that it gets different oxygen through it. And it all just makes a huge difference to flavor. And it's just, everything makes a huge difference. And that's the great thing about food. Great food is all about the flavor. And it comes from having great ingredients rather than commodity, and commodity chocolate's the perfect example where basically they don't care what the quality is because they're going to basically just add loads and loads and loads of sugar, salt and fat. They're not going to care about how you roast it. In fact, they often roast it in a different way. They take the shells off the beans before they roast it. So it's called nib roasting. And you do that because you get a little bit more yield. So you get 3 to 5% more efficiency. But if you do that, you basically won't get the same flavor because you're not sort of roasting it in its natural shell, which is going to release more of it. So it's just one of those great examples to get people thinking again about flavor and about where their food comes from and about how it's being cared for and why you shouldn't be scoffing, why you should be savoring. So yeah, that's the big difference.